Welcome back to Something Simple. I'm Father Pollman.
I'm Father Schumacher. Got a question for you today, Father.
Pray tell.
Why should you bring small children to Mass? Why, you don't get anything out of it because they're just like bopping around and crying and not paying attention, and now you're not paying attention either, so what's the point?
Well, boy, sounds like you're not going to get much out of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think, is it okay if I just give a summary of salvation history then?
Sure.
Okay. I think it'll help put things into perspective. All right. So, we have the fall, and the human condition needs mediation, someone to represent us to attain God's mercy. That's the order.
I can't go up to God.
Not of your own power.
Nope.
So we see very early on that as soon as Abraham is called from his people, he starts offering sacrifice. So he becomes this mediator very, very quickly. And he entered into the covenant through circumcision. Now, the agreement or the covenant with God was that the children would also be entered in on the 8th day. The boys through circumcision, the girls, I believe, had a name day. It's when they received their name. So they entered into the covenant. Well, this ended up making it possible for them to share or offer themselves at the sacrifice. This is further developed when Moses receives an image of the divine worship on Mount Sinai. So they have the meeting tent where God comes down to meet Moses. Aaron is instructed on the sacrifices. And those who have entered into the covenant, again, through circumcision and that receiving of the name on the 8th day of their birth, they show up. They show up and offer themselves. And so when King David's son Solomon finally builds the temple, the people come and they worship God. And what does that worship look like? We might be shocked. There's, I believe, 2 sets of curtains between the priest and the people during the holiest on the Day of Atonement, when the priest enters the Holy of Holies. The people are outside. There's billowing smoke from burnt offerings, incense, tables with bread, and then you have the outer court with the Gentiles who are even further out. But what was their worship? They showed up, and I believe it's Romans 12:1. Offer your bodies as a living sacrifice.
Right. So when we go to Mass, what's happening at Mass is that Jesus Christ himself, in the person of the priest, is offering himself to the Father again. He is standing as our priest, as our representative before God the Father, so that we can have that eternal life. That's what's happening at the Mass. That's why Mass is, as it were, kind of an opening of the curtain into the veil into heaven. We are so privileged to go to Mass, including those who don't entirely understand what's going on there. Thanks be to God for that.
Actually, if you think about it, it's very beautiful. So circumcision on the 8th day of birth, we can see very easily then how natural it was for children, infants, to be baptized in the Christian faith. So it's very interesting then, because you actually have a baptized child who has no sin. Well, who's going to actually make the purest offering at the sacrifice then, aside from your children?
Right. Jesus says that he will receive perfect praise from the mouth of children, right? He says you can't come into the kingdom of heaven unless you're like these little children. They don't understand what they're doing, perhaps. They need to be taught. And actually, that's one practical reason, not that we're entirely reducing things to practical. One practical reason to bring your kids to Mass is so that they learn how to go to Mass. If you never bring them, then it will always be the first time. So you bring your kids to the Mass in order to acquaint them with the Mass, with this communal, corporate act of worship, so that they can also be a member of this worshiping people, because it's by that worship that we have access to the Father. Jesus worshiping on our behalf, we join him in that worship at Mass, when he's present among us in the Holy Eucharist, present among us in the person of the priest, the sacrifice is being made, and your children are present at that.
So we'll see you at Mass.